Now I know it's come out something about a sex club of some sort. Now these stupid people, as I'm going to call them, both stupid and full of beans, where they don't seem to have all their thinking together. They have said something about sex clubs operated by the Watchtower. You never said that. That's a bunch of twisting that they have done. But I have heard somewhere in there that someone I think this is correct, who was a high-up witness, had some kind of involvement with a sex club situation that got taken care of by the police some years ago. Or is that right? Do you or any other listener have information on that?
There was a club, well, for the simple use of the word, a sex club in Queensland on the Gold Coast. It was called the G-Spot Club. It was based in a local high school and in a Broadbeach congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses on the Gold Coast, and involved girls from the school and from the congregation. And it was reported, well, actually, the original allegations and the existence of the club was discovered by a 12-year-old girl. And for reasons I won't go into over the radio, that girl told me. And I looked into it, and that's when I came under incredible attack from the Watchtower Society. This was back in 2003. And there was very little I could do about the matter because the attack that they launched was so vicious, but in the end, the best I could do was lodge a complaint that they were not complying with child protection laws. And that's what actually introduced me to the existence of child protection laws. Now, one thing people need to realise with the phrase sex club, this is something that unfortunately is very, very common in Australia. There's been some clubs of this sort that are major crime syndicates, but that's not what I'm referring to here. In a lot of schools around Australia, and even in state schools, and we're talking about children that aren't teenagers yet, they're often selling sexual favours for small amounts of remuneration. Oral sex for $10 or $15 or $20. It's very, very common. And also making of nude photos of each other and selling them to each other. And it became so prolific in Victoria that the Victorian government passed very, very serious legislation that prevented the trading in child pornography or producing child pornography, which is what they called it, which were the photos of these sorts of things taking place. But what the government failed to realise in introducing the laws is that the people who were running a lot of the little clubs were actually children themselves. They were doing it themselves. They were taking photos of each other. They were organising little prostitution rings at the back of the school. And we had some massive cases here, and the government decided that it can't prosecute the children for the stupidity of each other. So that's caused a big problem there. But in this situation, this one was being used inside the congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. It involved a number of teenagers, and those that had been able to become a part of it were well respected within the Jehovah's Witness community. So they knew that I was about to blow the lid on it, and I got accused of all sorts of horrible crimes in Queensland. I was literally set up as the person who ran the whole thing and did everything, but went through and it was found out that, it wasn't me, that I had never been in Queensland during that whole period of time. and some people got disfellowshipped, other people just left the area. But it became a mess, but it was well and truly covered up by the Watchtower Society. And in my liking, they didn't act to protect the children, but they actually acted to protect the elders that knew about it and did nothing.
Wow. So, Steve, let's get back to the case that's been dropped. Is there any hope for reviving it or going on with it in any way? And how would that be done? Can you tell us that?
Okay. Number one is there's nothing I can do about it. I can't reopen the case. I can't restart it because only the Director of Public Prosecutions can relaunch a criminal case. There are lots of other offences that have been committed by other bodies of elders and other Jehovah's Witnesses across the state, but I could only afford to do the one and the one in my area. But no, it won't be opened again. What that means is now the governing body is free to take the initiative to apologise to the children for not protecting them. There's no court case hanging over them. They never turned up, so they can tell the congregation that they've never had to answer, or they've never answered any summons. They had to answer one, but they never answered it. And they're well and free to apologise now. As to whether they will or not, that just depends on whether they obey and practice what they preach.
I would like to ask Stephen if he would address this question. Many people have wondered why there was practically none, media coverage. Did you contact the press?
I have given numerous interviews to the press and to a number of television networks. I've had journalists come and meet with me on a regular basis to interview me, to discuss matters. I've spent almost as much time dealing with the media from around the world as I have dealing with emails from Jehovah's Witnesses or former Jehovah's Witnesses or those interested in the case. Every media person that I've spoken with and that has followed up the discussions with me have all had a very similar three-point process. One is the accused won't discuss anything with them, which, while the accused has a right not to discuss matters, and that's their lawful right, and they asserted that right, the accused actually doesn't have the lawful right to refuse to turn up to court and answer the charges. But that's beyond my control there. The reporters and the media have also stated that they've had no cooperation from the police, no cooperation from the Department of Justice, no cooperation from the Child Safety Commissioner, and no cooperation from the state government of Victoria. All have refused, as far as I understand, to discuss the matter. Everyone refused to discuss it before the charges were laid, all claiming, there's currently a police investigation, but there never was a police investigation because there was never anyone that actually investigated it. And when I proved that, that's how I was able to get permission to prosecute, because there was no investigation. Then when the charges were laid, everyone said, well, it's now before the courts. And the interesting thing is the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses never appeared before the courts. The congregations around the Jehovah's Witnesses in the community, apart from a few near where I live, on a whole, they don't know about the case. The lack of media coverage has been disappointing. I am surprised because it's not every day the entire worldwide corporate and religious hierarchy of a church is criminally charged. we're not talking about charges that are frivolous. We're talking about charges that could see each member of the Committee of Management actually do time. There was another common thread from a lot of the people that interviewed me was the amount of, I have to use terms that I'm comfortable with, the amount of slander, reviling, libel and defamation that was heaped upon me by almost everybody the media contacted. The people within the religion whom they spoke to accused me of being the criminal, accused me of being the child abuser, accused me of being a disgruntled member. They told them that I was disfellowshipped for sins. And the media often came back and asked me about those things. I don't believe they did it to try and cause a controversy, but I believe that they asked me about those things to let me know that this is what was being said about me. I've had some of the most horrendous hate campaigns launched against me within Victoria by Jehovah's Witnesses and others. I feel sorry for these people in that they feel the necessity to do that, but that's not what I feel sorry for them for, is if they knew what Bethel Australia and the Watchtower Society had already done to me in the 7 years lead up to the criminal charges, they wouldn't have wasted their time trying to attack me or criticise me or discredit me. The best people in the world at doing that is the religious leaders of Jehovah's Witnesses, gave their best shot at me. And I survived it. Even though I hit rock bottom and tried to commit suicide, I survived the suicide.
Hey, Joe, there's other people who want to come on. If you could hold on for 1 second, we've got a whole lot of people wanting to come on. Just give them 1 second.
I'm sorry. I've been trying to talk, and I didn't realize I was muted. It's Chris Christensen here. I've been listening for the last hour, and very interesting. Nice to hear your voice, Steve. Anyway, I've got some thoughts on this whole pedophile thing. For years, I've been observing that the authorities have actually been behind the scenes promoting it. We can thank Mr. Kinsey for all of that. Basically, his so-called research caused the criminal sexual code to be changed, because all sex is just normal biology and whatever, and and you can thank the Rockefellers for that. In any case, there's material on it which you can research. But the point is this, that, with this homosexuality and all the stuff that's being promoted by the people who run the world, their whole intent was to totally destroy all moral constraints, on this deviant behavior. Problem that they faced, though, they ran into too many parents who are saying, this is a pile of garbage. We got the Penn State issue right now. We got other issues that are coming out. Ireland, within the last year or so, went berserk when they found out that the authorities, the police, knew about what was happening in the Catholic Church. There's a history to all of this stuff. And the governments have basically promoted it. I mean, they're all working for the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the other bankers who run the world. And as I said, the Rockefellers are the ones that promoted Kinsey and his research, and we've seen what's happened in the demoralization of sexual ethics. So now, as you had said earlier, Steve, you know that the government never made the Watchtower comply. And now a new government gets elected and they want to do something about it. Well, I think what you've got is a reluctance to do anything, because that is the agenda of the people who want their one world government. What do you think of that?
Very interesting. The complicity of government officials and the powers to be is always something that I've seriously kept an eye on during the last 3 years. But there was one thing that I've noticed in the state of Victoria, which I found was very interesting for the case. I'm not familiar with the matters in America or in Canada or even Europe for that matter. But since I started this case 3.5 years ago, I've gone through 2 different state governments, 3 chief commissioners of police. I've gone through 4 assistant commissioners for crime. I've gone through 2 attorney generals, 2 ministers of police, 2 premiers, and 2 governors. And what I found interesting about this is that these people, as they change from one person to the next, they're not being controlled by anybody. They're just their own free moral agents. So I sort of ruled out quite a while ago that there was any complicity or conspiracy to cause any hindrance in the case from the powers to be. On the other hand, I have noticed in public servant positions, like a couple of police officers, a few government officials, that there does appear to be an incredible amount of effort on their part to stop the case rather than to actually assist the case. For example, for 3 years the police refused to do anything, and then the moment there was the article in the newspaper that stated I'd been given permission to file the charges, the police were all kind and sweet and caring for me and promising everything under the sun, that they'll do everything they can, but all I need to do is just go down to one of the police stations and they'll be all there waiting for me and they'll take it over and look after the case. But you see, I believe that was a last desperate attempt of certain individuals in the police force to hinder the case. So I told them, oh, thanks for the offer, but I don't need you anymore. Goodbye. And that was it. So a giant conspiracy, no. Attempts to pervert justice. I'm currently looking at a number of allegations that have been brought to my attention by quite a few people, but I'm not in a position of authority to look into those matters. They can bring it to my attention while I was the prosecutor. I've got the information now. There's nothing I can do with it. If I go to the police, that's where I have to lodge a complaint. I don't have faith that the justice will follow it through. It's that's the way it is, but yeah, always in the back of my mind as to who keeps popping up in different places and stopping what I'm pursuing.
Well, you know, police have a certain mentality, and I don't care if they're from South Africa, the United States, Ireland, wherever they're from. They all have a certain mindset. Now, who do you suppose they're really serving when they're said to be serving and protecting? Who are they doing that for? Now, the impression is they're doing it for you and me, Joe citizen kind of thing. They're not. They're serving the interests of their masters, the governments. I can give you a clear case of that right here in my own area, where an injustice was committed against a fellow employee. And when that employee and his wife went to the local constabulary to have an investigation of these charges because they were false, and when a couple of other employees did the same thing, oh no, the police response was, well, we're not going to get involved. That's between you and your employer. You've got to go settle it out in the courts as to who's who in the zoo. We can't get involved. On the other hand, when a lawyer representing the corporation which caused the injustice goes to the police and asks for an investigation, guess what? They jump to the pump. Boy, do they ever. Unfortunately, in this situation, when they did the investigation, which was against a town council membership, what happened there was the police found out that the charges that the company had laid were all fraudulent and that these people were improperly treated. I took that matter to a shareholders meeting of the corporation that we work for, and I got this guy's job back because I revealed to them what was actually going on. I was a union rep that was helping this individual. But it was clear to me, and there's other things going on that I'm very well aware of, that illustrate that the police are not working for you and me. Oh yeah, sure, they attend accidents and they look after, crimes and whatever, but basically they are working for the political masters. And the political masters and the corporations are all working for the bankers. That's what the conspiracy is all about. Just follow the money. So my own personal experience is different than yours, which is fine. But it's interesting that you have a certain concern about what you're seeing. But I can tell you from what I've experienced, I'm telling you the absolute truth. That is how this system works. For example, take the United States of America. Any American will tell you that they won the War of Independence against England. They've never been independent from England. What that war was all about was over unfair taxation. I've got information that shows you that right from the Magna Carta all the way down, America is still subject to England. Did you know that 30% of all gold, silver, and copper that's produced in the U.S. is shipped annually to England? There's an irrevocable trust that was set up, and so long as the kings of England and queens of England have children, that trust remains irrevocable. So it's stuff like that we don't get the real truth about what's going on. And the news media, who are they working for? They're working for these robber barons and whatever. And they put in the media what they want you to believe, and they keep all the real juicy stuff out of the mix. I mean, it's like impossible to get some of these things going. So that's what you're up against.
One of the things I've had in this case is the amount of people from government departments, including the police force, that have contacted me with information that they felt I needed to know. And I have no way of verifying who these people are or who they claim to be. But they've revealed information that only certain people would have. And I've ended up being able to amass quite a number of dossiers on factors that have caused me problems in the prosecution. But there's nothing that I can do about that. I'm aware of some situations. There's a lot of stuff I became aware of that I'm just not in a position to release, mostly because it's an allegation or it's hearsay. So I won't release that, and that's more information than people would even be aware of. I have taken what I've had and put it in a safe place in the event that the government ever decides to investigate the whole situation. But apart from that, we have a situation that sometimes we have a gut feeling that something's not going right. We can act on the gut feeling to, say, flesh out the situation, which I've done on a number of occasions. I felt that things were being arbitrarily interfered with, so I arranged for somebody else to deal with the matter to then see how it was dealt with. And some of my suspicions were confirmed, but it never sort of hindered my actually getting the charges filed. But quite the opposite occurred, in that everybody seemed to be geared towards stopping the investigation and stopping the enforcement of child protection laws. But it was all the stopping that the police and various other people did, or the inertia that they just all ground up against, that actually gave me the ability to make application to prosecute myself. Had they done their job properly, in my opinion, then I'd never have been able to file the criminal charges. But because they didn't do their job, and I provided enough evidence, I was able to. So I had a victory in achieving that, which was sort of handed to me by their inertia, but it wasn't a victory for justice, but it was a victory in part for the children. So that sort of makes me feel a little bit better.
Sure,
Hello?
Steve.
But you do realize who's running the show out there. It's that guy called Satan. And so his system of things is going to repress any information that would affect his dupes, his organization. We'll call it what we will. Now, I'm going to come across with a personal theory, which may or may not be true. But my assessment of the leadership of the Watchtower is that they are the false prophet. They are Babylon the Great. And what's happening now is there's enough foment where there will be a mutiny against the Watchtower. And, of course, because it's cozy with the people who run the world, they're going to be protected by the world. But that's just my theory. So if I'm correct that, and I don't think anybody would argue that Satan is in charge out there.